This is George Bell, and we are going to read Fearless Frogs together by Finn, Ellie, Nettie, and George. The American Toad by Ellie. American toads have poison. American toads like to eat bugs, and American toads like wet spots. If it has a bare body, it is an amphibian, but not always.
Is this made by Ellie?
That was by Nettie. No, this page is also by Nettie. This amphibian is called the large-blotched Insatina. The tail does not have bones. It has 4 fingers. They don't have lungs, so they breathe through their skin. This page is by Ellie. Slugs eat garden food, and jellyfish have stingers. Those aren't amphibians, but those animals do things that amphibians do. What amphibian do you think eats slugs? Take a wild guess. What were you all feeding the toad yesterday?
Cricket.
Crickets, and there were slugs in there too.
Yeah, but Ellie and Finn said toads will not eat slugs.
Oh, okay. What amphibians do you think might have stingers? Or something like a stinger to protect itself? What do most frogs have to protect themselves?
Poison!
Yeah, poison. And jellyfish stingers, I think, have some poison in them too.
I think, yeah.
Okay. Here's some art. Right. This page is by Finn. This is about the African Goliath frog. The biggest frog is the African Goliath frog. One was caught in Africa in 1989 and measured 34.5 inches, snout to toes, with the legs extended. Stretch out your arms to the sides as far as they will go, and that is how far a Goliath frog could reach, fingertip to fingertip. They're so big they can even eat a mouse.
Art.
More art.
I hope the next page is mine. Oh, yep, I know.
The Texas toad has poison in their parotoid glands.
Is this by?
This is by Finn. The toad yawns to loosen the shedding skin. This page is by George. This page is about the crocodile. Now, the crocodile is not a reptile, or not an amphibian, but what is the crocodile?
A reptile.
And do you remember what 3 things reptiles need to make it a reptile?
They need to have They need to be cold-blooded. Not have a backbone.
Have a backbone.
Have a backbone.
And what has to be on their skin?
Scales.
Scales. And that's what makes them a reptile. Okay. And then the last page is by George as well. This is about the marbled salamander. Marbled salamanders live under logs and they eat worms. And that's the end of our amphibian book.
See, now we have these dwarf frogs. Dwarf frogs are aquatic. They don't have poison, and their ears are called tympani. That's the end of my video. Goodbye.
This is Finn, and he is going to tell us about his amphibian project.
I made this game. You need to, so these need to be flipped like this, and then you need to put it where you need to make it point to the part of the body that it has on it.
Okay. Can you tell us all the different parts of the frog that you made?
This is the parotid glands, the head, front leg, tympani, back leg, bottom.
Cool. What's your favorite thing that you have learned about amphibians?
That they swim.
All right. Thanks, Finn.
Because I like swimming.
This is Nettie Brown, and for her amphibian project, she chose to write a short story.
So here's the story. Mr. Stinky and Mrs. Buggy. By Nettie Brown. Once upon a time, a toad, a frog, I forget.
A frog lived in a big castle. The frog's name was
Mr. Stinky. Mr. Stinky.
He was an American toad.
Here's a picture of Mr. Stinky. And then here says Mr. Stinky. Over here is
One day he met a female toad.
her name was Mrs. Buggy. Mrs. Buggy was a
European toad. And Mrs. Buggy loved to play with worms, even though Mr. Stinky did not. Yeah.
Here's a picture of Mr. Buggy's castle. Sorry, the signal got in the way of the E.
Even though Mr. Stinky didn't like worms, he didn't mind.
Mrs. Buggy
Lived in a worm castle. One day,
he saw Mrs. Buggy playing with worms. Here's a picture of Mrs. Buggy. Even though,
what are you doing?
said Mr. Stinky. Mrs. Buggy said, playing with worms. Mr. Stinky decided worms weren't so bad. The picture of them having their feast. Worm feast. Watch out. Then that
evening
they had a worm feast
in Buggy's backyard. The feast
was delicious.
and they went off
To play.
again.
The end. The end.
Very nice, Nettie. This is Ellie, and for her amphibian project, she wrote a story about a salamander. Sally the salamander lives in a rock. Salad loves to swim. Salad lives in the salamander country. He has a froggy horse that takes him to town. When Salad goes to town, he picks tomatoes in people's gardens. One day, this froggy horse started climbing a tomato plant. It bent over and hit Salad on the head. Froggy Horse climbed right down to help Salad. Salad got back on Froggy and they hopped home. The end. Do you want to tell anything else about your story?
You could show
Or
our
about
pet frogs.
amphibians that you've learned?
Hey, look. It's from Sesame Street. I love to swim because I have a pool at home, and I've learned that salamanders and frogs can swim.
Very good. Thank you, Ellie.